Today's episode is brought to you by the folks over at SeatGeek, the best and easiest to use ticket platform out there. They take the confusion out of buying tickets using a 0 to 10 scoring system and a green is good, red is bad color rating system so you and your loved ones get the best deal possible. So whether it's going to see our beloved Redlegs at Great American Ballpark, the Bengals over at Paycor, FC Cincinnati, one of the area college teams, or pretty much anything in between, use promo code Riverfront at checkout and receive $20 off your first order. Click the link in the show notes to download the app and get started. That's Riverfront, one word, for $20 off.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Riverfront. This is episode number 507 of the world's most dangerous podcast, where we discuss the Cincinnati Reds and occasionally Wally Post. I'm your host, Chad Dotson. With me this week, once again, the Podfather, Bill Lack. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing great, man. It's a short week for the Reds. Not a lot of Reds news, so we're gonna see if you and I can stand under an hour tonight.
Yeah, right. Bill, I don't know. Yeah, we've talked a little bit. We text back and forth, but we haven't really talked face to face much since the live show, episode number 500. It was great seeing you there. Great having you on the show. That was a fun time, wasn't it? I just wanted to talk about that for a moment.
It was really a good time. That they got to meet people I'd never met before, and some people, it was just a really good time. Tim announced the other day that he finally opened the drink that I bought him that night that they stuck in a backpack, and I think it was like a month later he finally opened that up at home and drank it. But it was a fun night, other than the Reds not winning.
Well, there was a little of that going around at that time, but
yeah.
It was a good time. And again, as we said before, just so many people, more people showed up than I expected, so that was good. You never know, you throw a party and no one comes. That's what used to happen to me in high school, and it didn't happen this time. So it was good.
Yeah, so we even had some of our competitors,
quote unquote, right? Exactly.
We don't really have competitors; we have friendly rivals. But
right.
But it was good to see some people there. It's good to see Doug and some other people.
It was great. It was fantastic. So we'll look forward to doing that again sometime soon. So this is spooky season, Bill. Did you know it was spooky season?
Ooh, very scary. Ooh.
Bill, let me ask you a question. Do you like the horror movies? Do you like the horror movies, Bill?
Not really. No. The only one, well, The Exorcist was scary. What was it? Oh, what was it? And the original, the first Halloween movie, I saw that on the boat when I was in the Navy. We watched that on the boat. Turned all the lights off in the shop.
Dear Lord.
And there was a Stephen King, but it was
Carrie?
a mini series on television about a vampire. I can't think of the name of it, and I wish my wife was here because she would remember. That one I thought was scary, but overall, I'm not really a horror guy myself.
I never have been myself until really the last year or so. I watched a couple and I thought, I enjoyed them. One was called Barbarian, came out last year. I saw one that was sort of a horror movie, Midsommar, a couple years ago, and I started thinking maybe I am a horror movie fan. And so we, the lovely Mrs. Dotson and I decided we're going to watch some horror movies this year, leading up to Halloween. And we've seen some decent ones. Saw the new Exorcist in the theaters.
I was going to ask you about that because I saw the trailer for that in the theater, and it looked scary in the trailers.
It was fine. It was a little muddled, but it was fine. It was worth watching.
Was it tied into the original?
It was, and it had some interesting callbacks because we just rewatched the original before we went to see that. So from that perspective, it's pretty good. It was, it's fun. We watched the original Scream movie.
I've never seen any of those.
I hadn't either. And
they're kind of campy horror movies, right?
Well, I'm not sure campy is the right word. Sort of. There were a lot of callbacks to like sort of horror movie tropes,
Okay.
But it was good. The first one was really good. I was like, why did I wait so long to watch that? That was pretty good. So
Oh, the other horror movie that I remember seeing, and I saw this when I was in, and it was Carrie, the original Carrie.
yeah, Brian De Palma,
Mm-hmm.
Sissy Spacek started that.
Yeah.
Fantastic. For me, horror movies, I quit watching them when I was like, I don't know, 11 or 12, because me and my buddies, we rented we got a VHS copy, I guess, of wasn't The Exorcist, Poltergeist. Poltergeist.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, and we watched that, and I said, all right, I'm out. 12-year-old Chad said, I'm done. I can't handle this. And
I like The Omen.
I haven't seen The Omen.
Oh, the original Omen was pretty good. Yeah.
Oh, we're getting off the rails here a little bit already, but
there we are.
But I will say, we watched one in the last couple weeks, my wife and I, that was incredible. It's called Hereditary. Toni Collette stars in it, and there are just a couple of moments that are just it's really good. Hereditary. So anyway, we're talking about the Reds. That's not a horror movie.
Well, it can be at times.
Sometimes. So baseball season is still going. The World Series is set. It was exactly the one that everyone predicted. The Texas Rangers will be playing against the Arizona Diamondbacks. That's baseball for you. Any thoughts just briefly here about the World Series? I didn't see this one coming.
No, I didn't either. I guess I'm rooting for the Rangers. I don't really know why. I've got some relatives in Texas, and I like Texas. So
yeah, don't mess with Texas, they say.
That's what they say.
That's what they say.
I think it's interesting, though, that because it's not the top seeds, everybody thinks there's a problem with the system. Well, this is kind of what the system was set up to do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, we got a question about that later. So stick a pin in that one, because I want to talk about that, but you're exactly right. I guess I don't know who I'm for. I don't care. I'll watch it. Both these teams have some fun players. I got to see the Rangers play a little bit. Saw them play live this year, so maybe I should. I don't think I saw the Diamondbacks live, but the Diamondbacks frustrate me, though, just because if the Reds had won some games in the last week, they would have been in that spot. But okay, we'll probably dive into that a little bit. But that's what if. But
well, the other thing, the championship series were both really good too. They were fun to watch.
Well, that's and I won't get into it right now, but a lot of people are complaining about where we've ended up because of the system. But I got to tell you, those were two league championship series that were as good as any I've seen in years. Mm-hmm. I mean, both of them, game sevens, really interesting storylines. The Phillies blowing. Well, both teams kind of blowing it. The Astros and the Phillies kind of blowing it. Astros and Phillies being the
favored teams.
The favored teams, recent World Series teams, and so
and big wins by road teams.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely, and surprising performances. Nick Castellanos, I was hate to see he didn't get back to the World Series, because there was a short period there where he was the best player on earth for about 3 days. Our old buddy Nick Castellanos. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. More importantly, and I know this is what you're really focused on, Bill Lack. FC Cincinnati getting ready to start their run to the MLS Cup. How excited are you for FC Cincinnati?
Best team in the MLS.
Seed. They are going to the Supporters Shield winners. Oh, man. How exciting is this?
Well, they're the best team in the MLS if you go by record. Most points.
I know you're not a soccer guy.
I mean, they're Cincinnati. I have not been to a game since they went into the MLS. I had been to a couple of games when they were still playing up at Nippert when they were in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
But I have not been down to the new stadium. I want to go. I just haven't gotten down there yet. But they're a Cincinnati team. I'm rooting for them. Heck, I want them.
There you
go. And I was watching them last year when you could see them on television without having to go through a pay portal. Now you can't see.
Right.
Now you can't see them unless you got Apple Plus, and then I think you have to pay extra on Apple Plus most weeks to catch some of the games. So,
but I'm looking forward to watching them in the playoffs. I've watched them off and on all year, not as much as I watched them last year, the year before. I went to see them once at Nippert. I think I've been 3 times at TQL, and the reason I bring that up is just I cannot wait to watch them play at home in the playoffs. because soccer fans are a different breed anyway. But those are Cincinnati fans, and that's exactly what you'll see at Great American Ballpark. It's exactly what you saw at Paycor in the playoffs last year, the last couple of years. It's just Cincinnati fans are a different breed, and I just want to see that at Great American Ballpark again. It has been way too long since I felt that, and that's the only reason I bring that up.
If you give Cincinnati fans something to cheer for, you'll bring crowds, and they'll be into it. It's been that way my whole life. When teams are, and you can say whether it's fair weather fans, whatever word you want to use, but if you give the fans a reason to come to the ballpark and root, they'll be there and they'll root, and they'll be loud, and they'll be a part of the process. They'll be a part of the game.
Yeah, I've been kind of lamenting over the last few years a little bit. You've heard me use the term the lost generation of Reds fans. And I think the Reds really did squander a lot of opportunities to really build loyal fans by just punting on so many seasons over the last 2 decades. But I've shifted my view a little bit. I think that I don't call it fair weather fans, because I don't blame a Reds, someone from the Cincinnati area not dialing in on this team over the last 20 years, because most of those years they literally haven't tried to win. I mean, you can't even make the argument they were trying to win.
It's kind of like when the Bengals were in the dark years. They went 30 years without making the playoffs.
Exactly. And so, but if you give us a product, and it doesn't even have to be the best team in the league, it can be a flawed product, but if you're really genuinely trying to put a real team on the field, Cincinnati fans are a little different. There are other cities that have this, obviously, but you can say small market all you want, but the Cincinnati fans will really get behind a team that's trying. I think that's really all we're asking, right?
I would be willing to bet that I have no idea what the ownership predicted as a season attendance would be this year, but I bet they beat it by 1 million fans.
Oh, easy. I bet easy. I mean, it's really just kind of last year they had the lowest attendance in the history of Great American Ballpark, and
for good reason.
Exactly. And the last time they had an attendance that low was 1982, I guess, 1982. Last year's attendance was 1.39 million, so under 1.4. This year it was 2.038, over 2 million attendance. That is a huge leap year to year, especially because attendance numbers usually lag a year. Mm-hmm. Like if the Reds, you make a surprising run to the playoffs, usually it takes the second year before you start seeing the attendance. That's not what happened here. They lost 100 games last year and still realized this big attendance leap. So I think you're exactly right. I think they saw way more attendance than they expected. I'm sure they will plow that back into the roster.
Immediately, they'll plow it back into payroll. I would like to see it on a graph of average attendance per game and see when it's really started ticking up.
Oh yeah, it was
sometime in May, I would guess, late May.
I would say sometime maybe a week or two after Matt McClain was pulled up, and then it shot to the moon when Ellie got here.
Yeah, and then they had the 12-game hot streak or game winning streak or whatever it was.
Yeah,
and it was through the roof for that, and then it dropped. It came back down to a more reasonable level. But
I will always admit when I'm wrong, and I never would have guessed.
Always.
Well, sometimes, which is more than anyone else on the interwebs. Sometimes I'll admit when I'm wrong. The scenes we saw at Great American surrounding Ellie and Joey's return and the packed houses during that winning streak, I wouldn't have thought there was any combination of events that could realistically have occurred that would have given us that. And that's really when I started thinking, okay, if the Reds just try a little, the fans are ready to come back. And I still think there's a lost generation. I think they squandered an opportunity because Cincinnati fans are generational fans, and you can dads and grandfathers and mothers and grandmothers will pull you in, but there's not been nothing to pull them in. But I've sort of changed my thoughts. But it's all going to depend on what happens this offseason in some respects. If they squander it again, those people will just go back into the woodwork.
even as popular as the Bengals have been the last 2 or 3 years here, it's still a baseball town. I think it always will be. And
Yeah, I agree.
I think it shows by how quickly people were ready to come back, even after their knuckleheaded, assistant GM or whatever, assistant vice president or what Castellini's title is, told the fans before the season they had no chance. And still they were ready to come back the minute they saw something worth watching.
Bill, I hesitate to give you credit for anything, but that's a solid point you made. Finally, 507 episodes in, Bill makes a solid point.
Number one.
But that is the definitive proof to me. I think you're right that this is a baseball town, because we hear that argument. We've had that argument, and it's always traditionally been a baseball town. But with the Bengals coming back and the Reds being awful for the better part of a quarter century, you wonder if it still is. It still is. It's just ingrained in the DNA.
I'd be curious to know what Joe Farsing thought.
Oh gosh, I don't want to know what Joe Farsing thinks about anything. Joe Farsing, the host of the Riverfront Bengals show. That's a good question. That needs to be a topic for the next Bengals show. So I'm going to say I'm the boss of this here outfit, and so I'm demanding, Joe, that the topic for your next show is whether Cincinnati is a Bengals town or a Reds town, baseball town or football town. And if that's not the topic, I will know you don't listen to the flagship show on the Riverfront Podcast Network.
Well, he doesn't listen when I'm on. That's
well, I don't know. He had some pretty high praise when you were on his show there recently. And he and Nate did a good job. I don't know if you got a chance to listen last week. Last week, Nate, I wasn't able to make it. So Nate and Joe jumped on here and talked to Reds, and I laughed out loud at their Anchorman quotes. And I know you're a big fan of Anchorman because you think that Will Ferrell is the funniest man on earth. So let's move on to the next topic.
And none of that was true.
All right, usual.
Here we go.
All right, so finally we're going to get to, we're 17 minutes in. We're finally going to get to our outline of things we're going to talk about, Bill.
Okay.
Dusty Baker.
Oh, wait a minute. We got to talk about the big pickup the Reds made today.
Oh, come on. You want to do that first?
Yeah.
Let's do that first.
It's important.
Is it though? The Cincinnati Reds.
It's not.
The Cincinnati Reds acquired outfielder Bubba Thompson.
You got to like a guy named Bubba. It's good to have a guy named Bubba on your 40 man.
You should always, every team should have a guy named Bubba on their 40 man. I agree. Yep. The Reds' first offseason acquisition, if you don't count they're re-signing Luke Maile. The Reds acquired outfielder. I agree. Outfielder Bubba Thompson. He was waived by the Kansas City Royals, and so the Reds
games this year.
We're not going to talk about it. Bubba Thompson is, if Bubba Thompson is the last. I don't have a problem with the Reds picking up Bubba Thompson. He's basically Billy Hamilton light. He is probably, he's not quite, but almost as fast as Ellie De La Cruz, if that tells you something. The guy can move. Can't hit, but he can run. So I don't have a problem organizational depth-wise, but
25-year-old former first-round draft pick.
Yeah.
He had a good year in 22 at AAA.
It's I'm going to say that it's organizational depth.
Yeah, if he's on the Reds, we're hurting for outfielders.
If he is on the Reds on opening day, then something has gone horribly awry. Yes. Nick Krall has not done what we all are hoping that he.
That's right. I hope he has a very successful year in Louisville.
Right, and bring him up. Let him be when injuries happen. He's your 26th man on the roster. He can run the bases. He can play some defense. So, but you're right, Bubba Thompson. But I'm like you.
And it's assured.
Exactly. When they get that pennant, Bubba Thompson better be the one to be up front at that celebration.
Be the first guy to get his ring.
There you go. Let's talk Dusty Baker.
Okay.
Dusty Baker, longtime good big league player and longtime baseball manager, retired. His team lost. He's the manager of the Houston Astros most recently. Lost in the National League or the American League Championship Series. I still can't get over the fact that the Astros aren't in the National League. I still that bothers me. But the kids who are listening don't understand what the old National League West used to be. But Dusty Baker decided to retire.
When Cincinnati was in the West and Atlanta was in the West.
Crazy. It was
and
great.
St. Louis and Chicago were in the East.
Yeah, it was great.
The sun came up in the North then.
It was a weird time. You wouldn't understand if you weren't there.
Yeah, I did some research on Dusty today.
Well, I want to reflect a little bit about Dusty because he has played a significant role in this podcast's history and in recent Reds history. So let me hear your research.
Well, I looked at his playing career, and other than the fact that he played for the hated Los Angeles Dodgers,
who were in what division were the Dodgers in?
National League West, baby.
Exactly.
And he was a Dodger from 76 to 83. He had been an Atlanta Brave for 8 years, I think it was before that. He had a top 10 MVP twice, won a Gold Glove, won a Silver Slugger. He was the NLCS MVP in 77. Best years were probably 77, 80, and 81. He was a pretty good player. I mean, he was. And if you've ever seen the home run when Hank Aaron hit 715, he hits it right over Dusty Baker's head in the left field bullpen. But the thing and then I looked at his managerial record. And do you know who he is a very close comparison to as a manager?
Who?
Sparky Anderson.
I thought you might say that.
They both managed 26 years. Sparky won 2,194 games. Dusty won 2,183 games. Sparky's winning percentage was .545. Dusty's was .540. Average place, Sparky was 2.9. Dusty was 2.3.
Place in the standings, you mean?
Yeah, in the divisional the standings.
Yeah.
Sparky won 3 World Series. Dusty won 1. Sparky won 5 pennants. Dusty won 3. That's pretty damn close. He's Dusty's 7th all time in wins. Sparky's 6th. Everybody up in that stratosphere for wins is in the Hall of Fame, and so Dusty will be in 3 years. He'll absolutely be in the Hall of Fame. He had some good years managing the Reds, and other than you never wanted to go to the ballpark on Sunday because you didn't want them Sunday Dusty lineups, because you wouldn't see the good guys on Sunday.
No, never. Well, let me ask you: does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah,
you said he will. I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
what I want
Bucky Harris is below him, and Sparky is above him. I mean, he's in rarefied air. I mean, number 7 all time in wins: Connie Mack, Tony La Russa, John McGraw, Bobby Cox, Joe Torre, Sparky Anderson, Dusty Baker. And
yeah.
Bobby Cox managed 29 years, Torre 29, Sparky 26, and Dusty 26. So, absolutely he does.
What I wanted to sort of discuss here, because he was the Astros manager, he wasn't the Reds. This isn't Reds news right now, but I did want to take a moment to reflect upon his tenure in Cincinnati and assess it or perhaps reassess his legacy in Cincinnati. Now, here's a moment when I'm going to do what I said that I do all the time, when I'm going to admit that I was I think uncharitable, if not flat out wrong. I don't think I was wrong, but I think I've revised my opinion about Dusty Baker. Dusty Baker, now, first of all, he was here 6 seasons in Cincinnati. Those years they had losing records. So it wasn't like you say Sparky Anderson. This wasn't the Big Red Machine.
Right.
But it was coming off an era where the Reds were awful. I mean, the Reds really were. There was, a period there from, 2000 or 2001 to 2008 or 9 or 2009 or 10, where it was just unwatchable. But the other 3 of those seasons with the Reds, they won more than 90 games each year. They had the 2010 divisional championship that kind of came out of nowhere. They won 97 games in 2012, and really, to me, were as good as any team in baseball. I will go to my grave thinking that 2012 team The randomness of baseball killed them, and maybe Dusty killed them in the playoffs. We have to concede, but they were as good as any team in baseball. And I guess but the point I wanted to make here was at the time, and you can go back and listen to those shows. Those shows are in our archives. You can go listen to us talk about Dusty Baker. Me and Bill talking and whining about Dusty Baker, probably complaining about Dusty Baker. And I think we were right about Dusty Baker largely. His at least during his tenure with the Reds and before and after, if we're being frank, his in-game tactics were, shall we say, questionable. Mm-hmm. And I really do believe that's why he struggled. I'm glad he got his World Series last year. I'm so glad he got his World Series because he has been a great manager. But I think there's pretty ample evidence. And I think his tenure in Cincinnati is evidence as well of the fact that he is among the very best regular season managers that we've seen in baseball in my lifetime. I'm fully willing to believe that whatever magic he concocts in the clubhouse works because his teams consistently get to the playoffs. They consistently perform. They consistently overperform. They did in Cincinnati. I think whatever his voodoo is, it's kind of worked. Now, the fact that and this is what our complaints were at the time when he was in Cincinnati, that his in-game management was so bad. It just seemed like, because we were watching it day to day, we're watching it so carefully, it seemed like he's killing the team. And you can't see the things that happen in the clubhouse. When you get to the playoffs, those, bullpen management, everything, all the in-game stuff has sort of an outsized importance. And I do think that's why he struggled in the playoffs. But when he left, a lot of us were happy that he left Cincinnati. In retrospect, we probably should not have been. The Reds had 6 straight losing seasons after he left. And really, really more than 6 straight, because I'm not sure I include that 2020 season. But I think in retrospect, Dusty Baker was way better than I gave him credit for in Cincinnati, because what he did in the regular season, at least get the Reds to the playoffs, man, I'd love to have that now. So that was sort of a long soliloquy there, Bill. Am I wrong? Am I right? What are your thoughts about Dusty Baker's legacy in Cincinnati?
Well, when this was all going on, when it got to be 2012, 2013 was a disappointment after winning 97 games. And it was disappointing when you only win 90, and then the next year, and you lose out in the 1-game playoff. But they won 90 games and came in third. But we had all said, well, what I remember, without going back and listening to what we said at the time, I remember saying that he can't get us over the hump. He's taken us as far as we can go, as he can take us. And that may have been true. Because as you said, he's not been a real successful manager for most of his major league managing career in the postseason. But you got to get to the postseason. And once he left, we didn't. And, it took him a couple of years to get this team to where he wanted them to be. His first 2 years here he was not successful. In 2007, they won 72 games under Nairn and Pete McCacken. And the next year, they only won 74. And then the year after that, they only won 78. But they went from 4th place to 1st place, in 2010. And then they had a down year in 2011. And then they won that 97 games. And a lot of us think that they were as good as anybody in baseball and should have, gone a lot further than they did. I agree with you. Looking back, hindsight's always 20/20. But if I'd have known the direct that we were going to have as managers for the next 10 years, and I would have been happy to keep Dusty Baker here to at least have a chance for the postseason.
And Brian Price made him look a lot better, didn't he?
Yeah,
made Dusty Baker look a lot. Well, I mean, look at what he did. So the first couple of years, 74 wins, 78 wins in Cincinnati, then 91, dropped back to 79 in 2011. That was disappointing, but then 97 and 90, they part ways. A couple years later, he goes on to Washington, 95 wins. 97 wins. And so when he was 2 years with the Washington Nationals, 95 and 97 wins, and which is that's pretty good. And then that was it when it comes to his tenure in Washington. And then during, let's see, that was in what years were those? 2016 and 2017.
Yeah.
So both those years, the Nationals lost in the division series. Right. So, and then 2 years later, after he's gone, they win the World Series. With Houston, he took over in 2020, that shortened season, 29-31. But they win 95 games. Right. They win 95 games the next year. Win the American League pennant. And then the next year, 106 wins, and finally he gets that's last year, gets his World Series championship.
Well, if you go back to the beginning of his career, his first season, he won 103 games.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, with the Giants. That's right. He was 44 years old.
His last year with the Cubs is the worst team he's ever had. They won 66 games. His third year in San Francisco, he won 67 games, but he didn't have a whole lot of seasons below 500.
He didn't, and I don't know, maybe in the he did make it to the World Series in 2002 with the Giants, but it was different back in the days where only two teams made it to the playoffs. But he just never. I think that we were correct. I'll just say this. I think his tenure in Cincinnati was better than we gave him credit for because of how well he did in the regular season. But I think his reputation as not being able to manage in game and so not able to win the big ones. If you look at his entire career, it's justified.
Yeah, and
he had very little success in the playoffs.
And I don't think there's any argument that's magnified in the postseason. Every call, right. Every move you make as a manager matters because every game matters. I'd be concerned about David Bell because I don't think he's a good in-game manager. I think he's a mediocre, and we've talked about this ad nauseum. He's a mediocre manager. There's 15, really good ones, 15 really bad ones, and everybody else is in the middle. I think he's one of them guys in the middle. If I had my druthers, I'd rather have one of those 15 that are at the top because I think they're the guys that are most of the time are going to be guys in the postseason. Hopefully that's where we're going to be next year. And those kind of decisions are going to matter. But you got to get to the postseason for that to matter. And he always seemed to have his team kind of hanging around there. So, I think it's hard to argue that he's not one of the best managers of our lifetime.
No, I agree. Let's talk a little bit more about managers quickly before we move on, because some news this week, the Hall of Fame, that's the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum, Cooperstown, New York, announced the 8-person ballot that will be considered by its contemporary baseball era committee for managers, executives, and umpires. What a ridiculous name for a committee. So anyway, there is an 8-person ballot potentially for Hall of Fame honors. 4 managers, 2 executives, and 2 umpires are on this ballot this year. And 2 of those names, and I'm happy to run through them all, but 2 of those are, friends of the family here. Davey Johnson, former Reds manager, and Lou Piniella, manager of the 1990 wire-to-wire Reds. Either of those guys, big league Hall of Fame managers to you?
No.
I agree. And so the next question is this.
What was interesting though of that list, and this was just going off of memory, and I saw Jim Leland was on that list, and I said he's got to be way up there in wins, and he's below Piniella in wins.
Really?
Yeah, Pinella's 17th, Leland's 18th, and Piniella had a higher winning percentage. Actually, Davey Johnson had a higher winning percentage than either one of them, but he's way down at 33. For wins. And why is Cito Gaston on that list?
Because he won 2 World Series.
I guess. He's 75th in team and wins for man.
He was not I don't think he was a great manager, but Joe Carter dragged him across the line.
Yep.
Okay, so the question is this. Davey Johnson, Lou Piniella. Which one was the better manager? Better Reds manager?
My knee-jerk reaction would be Davey Johnson, even though he didn't win a World Series. I just remember him being a really good manager for the Reds, and I couldn't even point to one thing about it that makes me say that. But that's just what my memory. This is what my knee-jerk reaction would be.
Well, I think your knee-jerk reaction for the first time ever is correct. I love Sweet Lou. Sweet Lou gave us a World Series championship, and we may never see one again in our lifetimes. And so, Godspeed, Lou Piniella. Davey Johnson is the best Reds manager of my lifetime. Let me qualify that. I don't remember the Sparky Anderson years. So, I remember him in Detroit, but I don't remember the Sparky Anderson years. So, post Sparky Anderson, to me, Davey Johnson was the best manager. He's the best manager I've ever seen in Cincinnati. He took over in 93. Did he take over after? Maybe I'm misremembering. Did he take over after Tony Perez was fired unceremoniously? I think he did. Yeah, he did.
Okay.
And then 1994 was the strike shortened year. The Reds were in first place. Everybody talks about the Expos for that year. I thought the Reds were the team, man. They were going to be the team. The next year, the Reds were first place, 95. Shortened season, but they won 85, lost 59. I know they lost in the National Championship Series, and that series against the Braves that has caused Reggie Sanders consternation after all these years.
Well, he's not in the Reds Hall of Fame.
It is, but from game one to the end of his tenure in Cincinnati, Davey Johnson was the best manager I've ever seen in Cincinnati. And the fact that he was...
But he was living in sin.
Well, that's why he was moved out. Marge Schott didn't like the fact that he was living with his girlfriend. And
you look at his his time with the Mets. Won 90 games, 98 games, 108 games, 92 games, 100 games, 87 games, and then in 1990 he got let go, I guess, early in the season after 42 games.
He's the reverse, though, of Dusty Baker. Dusty Baker kind of looks better in retrospect because of the garbage that came after him. Davey Johnson looks better in retrospect. Well, no, he's actually the same now that I think about it. Yeah. I don't know what I'm talking about. Because after Davey Johnson was...
Nobody knows what you're talking about. So
good Lord. We need to end this thing. I've lost my mind. Ray Knight. He was moved out because Marge Schott wanted to give it to Ray Knight. Ray Knight.
Then we had what? Ray Knight, Bob
Boone,
Jack McKeon.
McKeon
was between Knight and Boone.
Yeah.
Then Dave
Miley,
Jerry Narron.
Jerry Narron. Oh my goodness. Then Dusty.
Yeah, and Pete how did you pronounce McCacken? Was that how you pronounce his name?
Mackinnon.
Jerry Narron had almost a 500 record with the Reds. He was 46-46 when he took over for Miley, and he was 80-82. Of course, then in 2007 he blew that apart when he was 20 under when he got fired. So
yeah, 31-51. Yikes. Anyway, we've talked a lot about managers. Let's move on, shall we?
Okay.
We have some viewer mail questions, and before we get to those, though, one more kind of item. We're now in the World Series time, and the Reds have a deadline to make a decision on Joey Votto.
Yes, they
end
do.
Of the World Series. We're going to make that decision. So, what's your prediction?
I think they're going to let him go. And I don't know whether it's the right move or not. I'll be honest with you. If he's telling the Reds he wants guaranteed playing time, then I think they have to let him go. It's so you would let you would let Joey Votto tell you how much he was going to play?
Yeah.
Nah, I wouldn't. No, sorry. Nobody's bigger than the team.
This team?
Yeah.
Joey Votto's bigger than this team.
But and I'll admit I struggle with the $13 million for what you're going to get out of Joey Votto. Every year you keep saying he's going to be Joey Votto. He's going to be Joey Votto. But he hadn't been Joey Votto in a number of years. He can't stay if he can stay healthy. He has a couple of good weeks, and then he plays badly for a month. I'm happy to have him. I would like if we're going to give him $13 million, I would sign him for if he'll take $13 million for 2 years.
We've established here on episode 507 that Bill Lack is a Joey Votto hater. I'm devastated by this news. I'm devastated.
That's not true. And I was looking at Joey's stuff on how he fits in with the Reds' history today. And 4th in WAR, 2nd on base percentage, 6th in slugging, 2nd OPS, 6 number of games, 6 at bats, 5 plate appearances, 4 runs, 5 hits, 2 total bases, 2 doubles, 2 home runs, 1st in walks, 3rd in RBIs, 1st in strikeouts. Do you know he was number 1 in the Reds' history in strikeouts?
I would not have guessed that.
I wouldn't either. He's 6th in hit by pitch. The other thing everybody talks about Tony Perez as being the all-time greatest clutch hitter for the Reds. Joey's numbers are with 2 out runners in scoring position are better than Perez's. Late and close, they're a little worse than Perez's. Joey's been a hell of a ball player for the Cincinnati Reds. But what do you always say?
Don't go out on a limb there.
But what do you always say? Nobody beats Father Time, or Father Time is undefeated.
It's true.
And if they can make the situation work for both sides, I want Joey to come back. But if he comes back and he says he has to play 5 days a week, no, he's not good enough to play 5 days a week on this team.
Well, I don't see Joey saying that, first of all.
I hope that's the case. Well, and that's the other thing. When you're reading all this stuff in the media in the last couple of weeks, and the Reds are saying, I don't remember who it was, Nightingale or one of those guys said the Reds are going to, or it said that Bowden said, I think it was, that the Reds were ready to walk away from Joey Votto and blah, blah, blah. But then they also said the Reds haven't even talked to him and the Reds hadn't set their budget numbers. So, I mean, the statements didn't make any sense. I don't think either side knows right now what's going to happen or what they want to happen, unless the Reds have set their budget numbers and they haven't really let anything squeak out about it.
Yeah, well, I think what you just said is largely correct. Let me just say a couple things about this. I think that I don't know Joey Votto. I have had one somewhat extended conversation with him, and it was not within the last few weeks, so I don't know. My guess, based on what I do know about Joey Votto, and some of it is publicly available information, some of it's not, but my guess, and this is just a guess, is that he would not say, I demand X number of, at bats. I wouldn't, X number of, or that I'm the starting first baseman. My guess is he would say, I want a legit shot to win the first base job or the DH job or whatever, instead of what David Bell did to him at the end of the season. Here's my prediction. And this is not a prediction that I am confident about, but I'm going to predict it. I think there's a better than 50% chance. I think the Reds are going to pick up the option.
Okay.
And you talk about budget, they haven't set the budget yet or whatever. They can pay him. They can pick up that option and pay him, and it does not impact this budget. They have no one under contract other than Hunter Green.
That's true. But that doesn't mean that that's the best place to spend $13 million.
I think it might be.
Well,
if they're not going to spend a ton of money, that might be the place where they can get the most bang for their buck, because it's going to. We saw how the fans responded to Joey this year. It's going to give them an opportunity to celebrate him all year, sell some bobbleheads, and I think they're going to do it.
Okay,
It might be wishful thinking.
We'll see. I hope they find a way to make it work for both, for the team and for Joey. It would break my heart to see Joey Votto in anybody else's uniform.
Oh yeah, really. So
it'd be like it was like when Pete and Joe were playing in Philadelphia.
Yeah, Joe Montana in a Chiefs jersey.
Right.
Okay, so let's get to some viewer mail questions. Now, before we do the viewer mail questions, these always come from our friends at patreon.com/riverfrontcincy, where you too can support the Reds. We have a couple of additions to our beer league softball team. Some guys that I think are probably excited about the future of the Reds. Why else would you sign up for this wacky show?
This nonsense.
Yeah, really. Now, these have been. I'm sorry it took us a couple weeks to get to these, but it's time to celebrate a couple of new members of our beer league softball team. Jeff Inman. Jeff Inman is the first member here. Now, Jeff Inman just joined the Riverfront team within the last month, and so we have to assign him a position. To me, Jeff Inman is a shortstop. He probably shouldn't be a shortstop. Defensively, he probably needs to move over to second, but he can hit. And so you have to have him in the lineup. So maybe your second baseman's pretty good. So you got to get him in the lineup. So you put him at second. But Jeff Inman is a professional hitter. And he's below average defensive shortstop, but a professional hitter. And so that's where I think he is. What do you think, Bill?
See, I had him as a left-handed power hitting first baseman.
Oh, my. Well, that's better.
He can pop one over the fence whenever he wants.
Well, I thought he was more of a Jeff Keppinger type. Jeff Keppinger. Jeff Inman, thank you for joining us. Sorry it took us a couple weeks to get you your position, but we really appreciate you joining the crew. Look forward to getting to know you a little bit more in the coming weeks and months. Next, another member of the beer league softball team, and I got a problem here. This guy has not publicly revealed his name to me yet. Baseball Rat. The Baseball Rat is a member of the beer league softball team. I don't know how to assign a position to Baseball Rat.
He's the guy that has to put all the bats in the bag at the end of the game.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you email me, Baseball Rat, at I'll go ahead and give you my email address, dotsonc@gmail.com. Email me, tell me your real name, and if you're willing for that real name to be provided on the show, we'll give you a different position. But as for now, Bill, I think you got it. That's Baseball Rat.
He can sit next to me at the beer tap there on the bench.
Oh, well, that's actually maybe the best position. But thank you, man. Thank you, buddy, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Yes, absolutely. First question, viewer mail. Joey Gaditza, gentlemen, with Halloween quickly approaching, what's the most appropriate costume for Phil Castellini to wear? The easiest question in the history of the Riverfront. The easiest question. The most appropriate costume for Phil Castellini to wear at Halloween is a clown costume.
Ooh.
What else could it be?
Great point. Yeah.
Next question.
The other one I was thinking of was like Scrooge McDuck.
Oh, well, or Scrooge from Christmas Carol, but either way, yeah, that's not a bad one. James Urban asks, what are your thoughts on the 6-team playoff? Does it need any tweaking? Now, you said earlier tonight, the playoff system as it's set up is set up for the chaos that we've seen and for teams that are not as good to get into the World Series. Do you think this playoff system needs tweaking, or are you okay with all this chaos?
There was some talk about the first place teams having to sit for too long, but I think that's just whining because you got beat. You know, if you're worried that you're not staying fresh, have your pitchers throw a simulated game or something, to be ready. I think it worked out well. The games were exciting. I think, like we said earlier, the championship series were both really, really good. If Major League Baseball is unhappy with Arizona and Texas in the World Series, that's their problem. I'm sure they wanted the Yankees and the Dodgers or Phillies and the, Houston or something with a bigger market. But if you give the wild card teams a chance, once in a while, they're going to make it. And this year, 2 of them did.
Yeah. My opinion is that we got exactly what it's designed for. This is what the playoff system is designed for. I don't love it. I mean, I'm fine with the chaos, whatever. It's I like the chaos theory of the baseball playoffs in the sense that all it takes is you just have to get in.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure we'll ever see a Reds team that is dominant enough to be the best team in the league that you think's a real favorite. A better chance, especially under Castellini, is that we might sneak on in. And so this current system gives the Reds, if they can sneak in, a better chance maybe of making it. To me, I would prefer, just as a baseball fan, to see the best teams in the World Series, the best teams in the championship series.
But if you want to do that, let's go back to just one league, or one team from the National League, one team from the American League, and they play in the World Series.
Yeah. Well, we're not going right, but we're not going back to that.
Back to 1968.
We're not going back to 68 as much as Bill would like to do that. But I didn't mind. People complained about the wild card system where you had one wild card game and the loser went home. And I'm like, well, win your division. I like the one wild card concept. Just a one game wild card playoff, and then the teams that win their divisions have a chance to rest a little bit. I don't buy this rest argument that we did here this year. Too much rest. Get out of here with that nonsense. Go win your games. But I don't think increasing. I've heard the suggestion, and I think my guy Nate Dotson may have suggested this on the Twitters. I don't buy the suggestion that, well, let's extend the wild card, the first round, to 7 games, and that'll ensure a better team gets through. No, I don't like that. I'm like, it should be shorter. There should be a penalty for not winning your division. That way, there's a better chance the best teams make it through. But baseball is inherently unpredictable. This stuff's going to happen with an expanded playoffs.
It's not only baseball too. No matter how they try to change these things to make them better or more fair or whatever, people complain. They've done it in baseball. Every time they've changed it, there's been there've been people complaining that they need to do this. Look at the college football playoffs. They didn't like the full. They wanted to have something. Then so they gave them the 4 teams. Then they don't like the 4 teams, and they're going to, what is it, 12 next year?
95 teams are going to be in the playoffs next year. That's what I think.
And before long, people are going to be bitching about 12 teams. It's just those 12. We can't get these other teams. People are always complaining because nothing's ever perfect, and you just have to do the best you can and move on.
I never complain about anything.
Okay.
Which brings us to our next question, our group of questions. We'll take all these together. There are 3 in a row, and it's about evidently a controversy or a non-controversy that happened on Hash Brown Red's Twitter this week that I was kind of unaware of, although I may have caused some of the problems. So, first question from Kyle Kapler. And I don't want to talk long about this because it's boring to me, but I'm going to answer these questions. Kyle Kapler, why are there Reds fans who would rather remember prospect lists or prospect rankings rather than a playoff or pennant chase? Is that what people want to remember 10 or 15 years from now? I don't see the Rays or Guardians raising any banners. Seth Shaner asks, why do some people believe you either have to be the most miserable person in the world or just happy the Reds exist? Those are the only 2 options to some. Why can't you be a huge Reds fan and still feel more could have been done by management to be in a position akin to the current Arizona Diamondbacks? Thomas Dennis jumps in. I'm going to jump on Seth's bandwagon. Thomas, I love you, buddy. You've been a friend for a long time here on the show. Don't jump on Seth Shaner's bandwagon. You don't want to make that mistake. I'm going to jump on Seth's bandwagon. Chad, you need to put a comment there. Chad, Twitter has officially branded you as the old man yelling at the kids. Are you the new Bill Lack? Are there now 2 of you? And I'm not sure how to feel about that. The original is awesome. He's talking about you, Bill.
Yeah,
but 2.
I am awesome.
So here's the quick rundown as I understand it. The Diamondbacks qualified. First of all, I've been mostly absent from Twitter for weeks and weeks and weeks now because it's not worth it. And really not just since the trade deadline, I've been like, I don't need to deal with some of these Reds fans. Be a Reds fan however you want. I'm not criticizing. I don't care how you cheer for but I don't need the drama. So I jumped back on. I've limited myself to, I'm trying to get less than 10 minutes on Twitter a week. So that's not much. Well, after the Diamondbacks qualified for the World Series, I jumped on there and made some snide comments, just trying to be goofy. about how 2023 was never about winning.
Stirring the pot.
I was stirring the
pot.
2023 was never about winning for the Diamondbacks. They were ahead of schedule. Some of the lame things we saw from some certain commentators on Twitter about the Reds this year. And then I left. And so a few, like 2-3 days later, I jumped back on. 2 days later, I guess I get back on, and there were some vague references to, well, I got a text from our buddy Tim Daniel, and then I got something in our Slack channel about, oh gosh, they're dragging Chad again. And I still don't know what people said because I don't care. I really
don't care.
Yeah, I could not care less what randos on Twitter say about me, but there are a bunch of people that who think Nick Krall hangs the moon. And if that's you, wonderful, man. That's great. Love the Reds however you want to love the Reds. I'll love the Reds how I want to love the Reds. We all do love the Reds. I really don't care. But I think I must have been a topic of conversation amongst a certain set of Nick Krall lovers on Twitter. And I'm just like, and to go back to the original question here, or not the original, but Seth's question. Why do some people believe you have to either be the most miserable person in the world or just happy the Reds exist? And that's because you're basing that on Twitter. Number one, Twitter's not real life. Number two, that is what happens on Twitter. Politically, with movies, with every single team, not just the Reds. It's two extremes. And just get away from Twitter is all I can say. It's just not, it's not representative of the Reds fans that I saw at Great American Ballpark when I was there this year, of the Reds fans who were there during the Reds cheering on Joey Votto and during the Reds win streak. It's not the people that came to our live show. They just love the Reds. They just want the Reds to win. And anyone out there, I assume someone was suggesting I'm miserable all the time. Buddy, I love this team. I've been doing a podcast since 2007 about this team. I love this team. I like talking about them. Am I going to tell you that they're perfect when they do dumb stuff like we've seen? No, I'm going to tell you the truth as I see it. But I've never been. I'm not going to tell you what my age is, but I have never been happier in my life, and that's because the Reds don't have any control over whether I'm happy or not. And so when they do well, I'm going to be happy. But I don't know. I don't know what to say about this quote unquote controversy on Twitter because I didn't watch it. I'm not going to watch it. I don't care. I don't care what these idiots from Chatterbox Sports think about me.
Well, there you go.
Anything you have to add to that, Bill? I kind of went off on a rant there.
I do agree with there's a middle ground between being, pie in the sky, unicorns and rainbows about the Reds and being in the depths of depression. But
I feel like that's where we are, right? In that middle ground, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. When they do things that we think they're going to make them successful, we say that. When they do things we don't understand, we say that too.
Right.
And it's not like we're getting paid for doing this.
I guess exactly. What I would say is this. Don't listen to people that disagree with you and want to yell at you about it. Enjoy baseball how you want to enjoy baseball and be kind to each other. It's so crazy that people who I will never see it because I don't look at the replies. If people want to criticize you or jump on you or call you names, just ignore that nonsense because it's not worth it. And if people on the other side, the Nick Krall lovers, if they want to say everything the Reds do is perfect, wonderful. Let them do it. I mean, I think they're wrong. And I've criticized, the only people I criticize on Twitter are Reds management and ownership. I don't criticize. I've been nice to everybody else on Twitter, I think. And so the fact that they come for me, I just don't care because Twitter's not real life. And I just think we need to be more kind, even to those we disagree with, especially about something like baseball. Right? It's baseball.
I've been doing this internet thing a long time.
Longer than the rest of us. Yes. I mean, you're the godfather.
We were just talking about this, a couple of weeks ago was the 39th anniversary of when 29, 39. I forget what was. I told you what it was. It 39 or 29, Chad?
Who can remember at our advanced age?
Anyway, when I started my Reds and Bengals listserv lists, which were kind of the original of all these things, it kind of was the seed. It was the seed that a lot of these things grew out of. And when I ran this list, and for the young people that don't know where they were just an email list, and you sent something into the listserv, and it went out to everybody that was on the listserv. But I didn't allow people to berate and be nasty to people on my list. I would bounce you. I've been involved in politics, local politics, for a long time, and the one thing I found is the people that are successful at it have learned that you can disagree with someone without being disagreeable. And if you can't do that, you're never going to be successful in your life. And some of these people that can't do that, I don't understand. And like you said, the stuff on Twitter, these people that lose their minds, it just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I honestly don't care if you scream at me and call me an idiot or say that I'm miserable, whatever. I really, truly, it has nothing. It does not affect me at all. I don't see 98.8% of it. But I will say this: that listserv, the Cincinnati Reds listserv, back in the mid '90s, to talk about how old we are. But that's the first time I really died. I was an obsessive Reds fan, but I got on that in college, and here's back to the part about me admitting when I'm wrong. I'm going to tell you what happened to me. And this really shaped in a lot of ways, how I became a baseball fan, is that there was a long conversation, and it was respectful, because we were all respectful on that listserv back then. And I know those of you that weren't around back then don't really understand how listserv works. Go look it up. But I argued hard. I mean, I argued respectfully, because I appreciate the people that are on there, including Chris Garber, our friend here. Steve Offenbaker from the Locked On Regs was a part of that family.
Dave Lowenthal.
Dave Lowenthal. Remember him from back then?
Matt Malott.
Oh, good old Matt Malott. I hope Matt's listening here. Matt's been a longtime friend. He liked Pokey Reese too much, but I don't really understand that. But I argued for a full week about why, and this is, young Chad. I probably was 19 at the time, about why pitcher wins were the only way to judge how effective a pitcher was. And I mean, I was all in. I said, and I could not believe people were arguing back at me, but people were respectful, and we had a conversation. And eventually, after about a week, I was like, you know what? I'm wrong. I'm wrong about this.
And batting average was the same way that was the standard, that people were tooting.
Right. And no one on Twitter these days will admit they're wrong about things like that. The Nick Kroll lovers, the prospect huggers are going to go there until they die. Those that are just the Reds can do nothing right. There is an element there that will go there until they die. The Reds can do nothing right. The vast majority are somewhere in the middle. The vast majority. Mm-hmm. And so I talked more about this Twitter nonsense than I wanted to, because I really don't fully know what people are saying about me. And I'm not going to go look, because I really don't want to know, because I'm happy in my life. I'm happy, and I don't need people who are not happy in their own lives.
It's not worth your time.
It's not. It's really not.
Well, let's move on.
Happier.
Moving on.
I'm happy. Let's move on. All right. 2 quick questions, although Rich Thompson never gives us a quick question. But this question, first of all, we've already answered the first question of the show. Are we going to be able to finish this thing in less than an hour?
No.
Rich Thompson, gentlemen, in the spirit of the season, we're going to finish with a couple of Halloween spooky season questions. Ooh. What would be more disappointing to you? Asks Rich. Number 1, Reds management being blockheads and failing to bring back Joey Votto for a farewell season, or sitting in a pumpkin patch with Nick Kroll on Halloween, waiting for the great pumpkin to rise to shower Nick with a budget that will enable him to land the necessary free agent pitching that the Reds so desperately need for next season. But instead, only a beagle shows up, and you and Nick miss out on trick-or-treating. All right. I don't even know how to answer that.
I'd snap him with Linus's blanket.
Let's snap Nick Kroll, Linus's blanket, and bring Joey Votto back. Rich, as always, thanks for your creativity in your questions. Happy Halloween. Final question, our buddy Brandon Kamick. This is a good one.
Okay.
Give me your Halloween candy hot takes. Your hot takes about Halloween candy. Now, Brandon's are these. 3 Musketeers and Milky Way are garbage. Do you have a Halloween candy hot take? I'll give you mine if you want a second to think about this.
Go ahead.
Here's my hot take that I think is a hot take only in recent years, but it bothers me. I think candy corn is actually good. People There we go. Bill just made a face if you're watching on the YouTubes. Candy corn is not bad.
Ugh.
That's my hot take. You don't like the candy corns?
No. My hot take would probably be Reese Cup is the greatest thing of all time.
Is that hot? Because I think that's accurate.
That's my hot. I also don't agree with the Milky Way being garbage. I'm a Milky Way fan, so.
It's been so long since I've had a Three Musketeers or a Milky Way, but I think what my hot take besides the candy corn would be that anything with coconut in it, just send it to the local landfill.
I like coconut shrimp.
Well, what about Almond Joy or
No.
Mounds?
No.
Not
Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't. Bill, we need to get out of here. Thanks to everyone for listening and supporting the Riverfront. Tell your friends about us. That's how you grow a show. Subscribe to the show either here on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app. We're getting closer to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so go join us. It doesn't cost you anything. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Riverfront Cincy, and then at patreon.com/Riverfront Cincy. Bill, any final thoughts for us here?
My biggest concern for next season is that everyone expects all the young players to get better, and some of them won't.
That is a conversation we're going to have next spring, I think. That's a good one. Yeah,
Well, we've got something else we're working on too. You and I are working on.
We are. I'm looking forward to that very soon. I hope so. Stay tuned. Thanks to everyone for listening. This is always fun getting together with Bill. Just hang out with us all off season. We got some fun things planned. So shout out to Adam Dunn.
Always.
Shouts to Lisa Alberto. Yes. Wayne Krenchicki and Eli Cash. For Bill Lack and Wally Post. This is Chad Dotson saying, so long, everyone.